Bath Riverside Enterprise area stretches from the city centre to Twerton along the banks of the River Avon. As it currently stands, this forgotten and underutilised site consists of a network of derelict brownfield plots with a deep and rich heritage rooted in the city's industrial history. Bath and North East Somerset Council have designated this land as a key zone for economic growth and regeneration over the next 20 years, and Fielding Clegg Bradley Studios are currently in the process of preparing the master plan for the entire site. A group of architecture and planning students from the University of the West of England have come together to form My Bath, My City, with a primary goal to capture the voices and opinions of younger generations within the city. These findings are intended to inform the master plan and development of the enterprise area. To actively engage with consultees and to promote the research project, the My Bath, My City team conducted a series of street surveys, utilising methods that younger people could immediately relate to. A temporary installation within a city centre shop was one of these participation tools. This installation emphasised the engagement of fellow youths through photographic records of those that had contributed to the activity. The installation was ongoing and an expanding part of the project, which grew as more people took part. People had opportunities to take part in this phase of the consultation in various different ways. With some powerful feedback, the team were able to collate strings of ideas and suggestions together that would help make the city appeal to a much more diverse group of people.
The general vibe I get from people is a nice one. It's kind of like a city village, if that makes sense. It's small, it feels like a city, but it's also small enough to feel like a community.
I sort of like, when I was picking unis, I sort of picked Bath because I knew it did my course. But then I came in for an open day after I got accepted, and I realised that it's actually quite nice.
I actually came here on holiday first, and as a kid, the impression I got of it was that it was a really stiff, upper class, boring place, and I would never have imagined that I was going to live here one day. But then I came back here in like 2006, and I ended up going to college here when I moved here and studied music, and at that point I actually found it really quite an exciting place.
I still like the city, it's lovely. As I said, you can walk everywhere, it's not too big, it's not too small, it's like just bigger than a town.
That is actually one of the main reasons. That is another reason that I was really happy to come to Bath, because although York, where I was, is set, obviously within Yorkshire and the Dales and everything, you can't step out of it into countryside. Whereas in Bath, you really can. You can just walk down a beautiful street and then suddenly you're in the Shire.
And I was sort of afraid of a big city actually, even though I didn't know much about Bath. I sort of assumed it was a kind of a big city. I didn't really know the difference between that and perhaps London. And I was, I don't know, I was happy where I was, finishing A-levels, and I just wanted to stay close to home.
Well, I still think it's a nice place. I still think it's a really nice place to look at, but I also feel it's a little bit like living in a museum, because it just, it feels like somewhere you come to visit and you're not allowed to really do anything with the buildings or anything like that.
Probably how nice it was. I'm sure it probably seemed like that at first. It's like, really nice, really nice. It was still very, very pretty. And then probably like more and more got a bit annoyed that it was a bit chic in some ways. I don't know, it was a bit kind of shopping district-y and touristic, which isn't, there wasn't quite so much going on, but I could see anyway. But
Bristol, I sort of see what we almost feel is a socialising, fun city where I live, whereas Bath I kind of saw as a city where I work, even as at uni.
It's very middle class. Sort of like an older generation, well not older generation, sort of like middle-aged, middle class. I kind of get the idea that some of the people that live here like commute to London and then some of them work here. I don't know, it's like a bit of a divide, like a class divide I'd say.
Yeah, but I guess because especially because in this university everything's kind of campus based, and they kind of chucked into Oldfield Park. It's kind of insular. There's not that much kind of widespread variety. It's kind of like students stick up to one area.
There's a kind of community feel in the Oldfield Park area, but that seemed quite divided still. So it was the students, where sort of on the whole, I think the majority of Bath students tend to live in Oldfields. It's a generalisation, but on the whole, and there was kind of a community feel amongst the students there. But I don't think I can't think of anywhere really where I felt like there was a strong community feel elsewhere in the Bath that I know.
The area next to where I live is actually quite community-wise, cool. It's got a transition group and they seem to have quite a big identity. But where I live in Fairfield Park, there's no real identity at all. It's just kind of a newer housing estate.
Well, actually, I really like this area. We're in Camden at the moment, and this feels like a really cool area. And I've noticed there's a lot of young people here, and a lot of musicians and artists, and so it's quite exciting. But we also lived in Bathampton. I think it was just the impression I got. Maybe it was a different age group, and maybe we were a bit young living in that area, because it felt, we never spoke to our neighbours and there wasn't that sense of community. When we moved in here, both our neighbours and everyone on this street, there was kind of conversation going on instantly, which was really nice, and it makes you feel welcome and makes you want to live in an area like that.
I know literally nothing about the enterprise area. I think I probably tend to think of business, if I'm going to be honest.
The enterprise area? I don't think so. No. Usually Spark's like more business enterprise, I don't know. But if something new and almost like entrepreneurial.
Kind of cosmopolitan city business district, but I haven't heard that phrase before.
I always think, for me, because I associate it with young enterprise, I'd think here and think cheesy and a bit sort of desperate. It just seems sort of, surely any area could be an enterprise area. It depends who uses it and how you use it.
Something related to business, I guess. But yeah, no, I'm not really sure what it is.
An area of businesses in Bath, presumably.
I think it looks really interesting. I think the buildings look quite tall, but I think if they're sort of properly integrated, they'd actually look really nice, and it'd be nice to sort of have something a bit more exciting. I think if they get this sort of environmental stuff right, like the sort of having green things along the river and things like that, it should be really nice to go and visit.
Yeah, I think the rivers definitely always seemed a bit kind of run down, and I don't know, when you kind of get introduced in studying architecture, we're always like, the city's going to turn its back on the river. It's a service end or nothing's really happening there. So it's definitely a good thing to build on. Yeah, definitely.
I think people are quite positive about it, although I know with the North Quays in particular, some people think that it's not gone the way that they wanted it to. With sort of Bath Western Riverside, I think people are getting used to the idea of having what's going to be there now, and I think people do generally think it's a positive thing for Bath, but there's a lot of NIMBYs in Bath, and they just, are very concerned about the fact that it's going to ruin everything. But I think it can only be a good thing to sort of slightly modernise the place and give you something slightly different to look at.
I think the waterfront has got to become more important than Bath, and just activating all that frontage across there is just an absolutely wasted resource.
I suppose because Bath is a very popular place, it would be nice to have some housing that's affordable for young people, because I think that's the hardest thing everywhere in England at the moment, but particularly down south and in London and Bath as well. It's hard for anyone my age to buy a place, really, unless you've kind of inherited money or you can't work your way up to that stage. So I think affordable kind of good housing for young people would be great.
Bath is very expensive. Bath is very expensive. It is. It's a beautiful town, and beautiful towns are expensive. That's just how it is. But especially if they're going to reclaim old industrial things or whatever, and they're going to make flats and things, then nice places but affordable. There doesn't seem to be an awful lot on offer, certainly within a certain price range.
Probably student accommodation, some housing, like a nice development or something. I don't feel that there's enough housing along that river. It's sort of like wasted. It's such a nice place.
What I'd like to see is more respect for green areas, so less building projects. There's quite a lot of that happening at the moment, and we were living in a village just outside of Bath, and there was a huge new build happening, and I would actually like to see people respecting and keeping our parks and our green spaces green and free of buildings. That's what I'd like.
I guess, yeah, like in terms of recreational wise, sort of parks and stuff, there's only, 2? And then even then, they're not, the one over there is not really well maintained, and they've got like goalposts up, but it's only like a couple of times a year, so it'd be nice to have sort of a dedicated area where you could sort of go out for recreational use. Like at the moment, we used to go to Victoria Park to play football, but that was like in the summer only.
And maybe an organic garden, and something the youth could come together and actually start taking pride in their environment and building and being more sustainable and resourceful.
Maybe some sort of sports facilities apart from Aquaterra, because I don't like that place.
There's no like football sort of like five-a-side centres. Like back home we've got a sort of AstroTurfs and stuff like that, whereas here it's sort of limited to just the sports arena, and that's it really, or the park over there. So yeah, it'd be nice to have a sort of five-a-side or something like that, something to go out to.
I guess it'd be called like alternative venues or that kind of thing, more like exhibition space. Kind of studios which would have, like private ones, and then there'd be a kind of ground floor exhibition space for them to kind of put stuff in.
But in terms of the creative industries, I know that's sort of the second largest area of growth in Bath other than tourism. They sort of see the majority of new startups are creatives, and I think office spaces for those would be great. You've got lots of graduates leaving the university, both unis, Bath and Bath, who could actually perhaps want to stay in Bath rather than move straight to London or to Bristol or to Manchester or wherever. So I think actually providing office spaces or hot desking areas that they could rent out would be great.
But also just in general more music venues, and I'd like to see more live music.
Because there is a lot of diverse music around Bath. I mean, you've got the pump rooms, performing classical performances, things happening in the churches. You've got the Green Park Brasserie for jazz. You've got the Hobgoblin for rock performances. You do have a lot of variety, and
As I said before, I don't think you necessarily need a music venue. Maybe just to re-establish more some of the ones that are already there. Just make them sort of have a louder voice, and just that's down to each individual company.
Places for that kind of thing, for music and art, that you don't have to go and play in a pub. You can go and do something creative in a place that's dedicated solely to it.
A good music venue, although unfortunately the good music venue did burn down, so it is going to reopen in August. It was Moles, yeah. But I think just places, just little venues and places that people can come. I don't expect us to have a big venue really. I'm not going to build an arena in Bath, but yeah, I just think it just needs a bit more of a scene. Even like little cafes, people can go and do poetry and things like that.
I think we could use more, and I think that some of the venues should be a bit more accessible for young musicians. It can be hard, it can feel like a bit of a closed book sometimes getting gigs at certain places. But I think that's more to do with the venues really, and it's kind of hard. You can book a gig, but then you feel like the venue aren't doing much to promote it really.
But yeah, so I guess Bristol had a bit more to offer, a bit more variety. So you could go from one place to another and you get two different sort of fields, which is nice.
There was a great thing in York called the Arts Barge Collective, which was a sort of a new thing they were starting up, and their plan was to put a barge, an arts barge, literally on the Ouse, which runs through York on the river. But it was this, they made a whole community of musicians. They found as many people as they could in York, musicians and artists, and just dragged them all together, which is really cool because then they'd have this massive pool of people that they can stage gigs with and they can put events on and so on. And it was really nice because the council and the Arts Council, but also the York Council, were helping them out. And so while they were doing this as a kind of charitable sort of business thing, they were getting a lot of help to do it. And they were finding all the spaces that weren't being used. You know, like their most recent one was just a space above a boxing club in York that just wasn't being used. And sometimes there's problems because you have licensing issues and stuff like that. But the council were helping and making that kind of, just greasing the wood, making that kind of thing a little bit easier.
They do have artisan markets down at Green Park Station once a month as well, but I think it'd be really great to kind of expand into the city because it almost feels it's not particularly far from the city, but it feels like it is sort of just pushed to the side slightly. And it'd be great to see more things like that happening in the city centre, pop-up markets and, kind of almost kind of what you'd associate with Bristol, actually, kind of little pop-up events and installations, performances, things like that, but I think it'd be really nice to sort of see in Bath. And there's lots of open public squares as well that I think could be occupied. So I'd really love to see the river brought into the city more. And as I said before, just some kind of more cultural things going on. They had a music festival, I think it might be still on at the moment in Bath. And it was just really nice because we could hear these loud noises from our flat, and it was really quite nice. We could hear the music and things, and we just went down and discovered it was like a sort of party going on in Sydney Gardens. Which is quite nice, and it would be really nice to experience more of that. But I think in Bath, people are a bit afraid of upsetting a lot of people.
I'd like to. It's really nice, but I don't think I'll be able to afford to, because there's not a lot of jobs which would actually pay graduate sort of salary. So I'd have to get part-time, and then I won't be able to sort of pay the rent and then live at the same time, sort of to enjoy Bath at its fullest. Yeah, I think if money wasn't an issue, I'd probably stay here for quite a while. It's quite a nice area, not too busy, but not too quiet at the same time, so it's quite good.
Quite like the proximity at the moment, but if it got to commuting was too much of a headache, I think I could move back to Bath and visit, have weekends off to go places elsewhere. So yeah, I could relocate if sort of things were implemented from the master plan. Housing was a bit cheaper, you get more for your money, which you perhaps don't get in Bath compared to other places.
I've always thought, since I've come to uni, I thought maybe later in life, when I can afford to, move to somewhere outlying Bath, like a really nice village, so it's sort of like a nice city to come into to visit. And you've also got Bristol, which is a bit bigger. But after uni, if I can afford to, and if there's a job down here, a graduate job which I want, then yeah, definitely. I pretty much go wherever the job is, though, to be honest.
I think so, yeah. Certainly I think we just have to reassess the situation when the time comes, but I think there's no plans to move or anything. I'm here for at least another 3 years doing my masters anyway, see what happens after that, but I've got no plans to move, and I quite happily stay here. It's so very expensive to try and get on the property market. That's the only big thing I think that would push us out apart.
Well, sitting here, I think it's beautiful, and that's part of the reason why I live here. And aesthetically, I love the place, and that's always been really important to me.
Tranquil? I think tranquil. That's a good word for it.
Gentrified.
Maybe like insular or something. Maybe insular. It's quite contained, I guess.
Have a phrase.
Phrase?
Yeah.
Go on then.
Nice but dull.
I like it.
Yeah, picturesque is a good one, but I think that maybe No, maybe it should be stronger than that. Maybe beautiful.
Pleasant.
Expensive? I know that's crap.
Cobbled.
Cobbled.
Yeah. There we go.
And what does that mean to you?
Old and picturesque and beautiful, retaining something from the past and keeping that special and not moving with the modern need to build.
It was apparent that there were trends appearing in the results, and that there are currently gaps in the city that could provide for new opportunities in the development of the Riverside site. This project has proved to be a hugely successful way of determining the importance of younger people's opinions and values, and the approach that has been taken to extract this information can be used as a project framework that could be replicated in other cities. My Bath, My City has the potential to grow into a citywide body that represents younger people within local decision making and implementation processes. A My City movement could become a national advisory organisation that represents youth shaping space in individual urban regions, ensuring their inclusion within the development of cities throughout the country.